Thanks everyone for joining me. Well, let me agree to be recorded. I have to do that very cautiously because there have been times when I've clicked the wrong thing and left the meeting. So I don't want to do that, particularly since I'm the one who's speaking. So this is great this is almost like a bit of a homecoming, and how appropriate that it would be a couple of days before graduation. I remember my own graduation quite fondly. I can't believe how many years have passed. To give you a hint as to what year or what time it was. At the time, I was working at Chase, and I did go into a management development program shortly after graduating from PACE. We had a huge contingency of PACE alum at Chase. There was even a Pace at Chase group. And so our big the dilemma of the day was Y2K. Get ready for Y2K, and what's Y2K going to do for the banking industry, and what's going to happen, and stock up on water, and all the things that we did then. And that just seems like such a blink compared to all the things and all the advancements that have happened in the world. We play a fun game, my friends and I, when someone says something in conversation that 5 years ago wasn't a thing. And I was talking to someone on a call, on a board call yesterday, and she said, well, Slack me and let me know what you think about that. I'm like, I'm sorry, what now? So now the evolution, right? And so I think, as job seekers, it's important that as we think about the evolution of Slack and TikTok and all of the, GPT, which is my favorite thing, and I'll talk about that in just a second. It's important that we stay abreast of how that can help us with our job search. And so the thing that I like to talk about is intentional job searching. And so I took a couple of notes about some steps that I think are important depending on where you are in your job search, or even just if you're thinking about starting a job search, right? You might be employed somewhere, and there's a term in the space of recruiting, right? There's the active job seeker, the one who's looking for a job and ready, as soon as to start. And then there's the passive, who I'm comfortable with where I am, but I know that I'm ready for a new adventure. And so I'm a little passive, meaning I'm not as I have more time, but I want to be very intentional because I have that time and the luxury of having a full-time job while I am pseudo looking. And so some things I want to point out that I think are important as you think about your job search. It's really 6 things for your job search. And then I have some tips about LinkedIn, also 6 things. And so when you think about your job search, it's important to be focused and purposeful. It's important to think about the job that's the right job, that's going to align with your current goals, your skills, and your interests. Also, in this environment, we think about jobs as a stepping stone, right? So this is the place I'm going to go now. It might be the place where I'm the company where I'm at for a number of years, but it might not be the role. I might move on in the company. I was at L'Oreal and I had 4 different roles during my time there. At JP Morgan, I might have had 5 or 6 different roles. And so I know that as companies are interviewing you, they're looking at you for the fit for the role, skill set fit for the role that they are searching for. But they're also, I'm thinking about, can this person go beyond, right? Can this person start in this role, and where can I see them in 2 or 3 roles later? Or are they just going to be a solid performer in the role that we're hiring for? And so whichever definition you think matches where you are, it's important to do a self-assessment. You should always start with the self-assessment. So think about your skills, your interests, values, and goals, right? So what are the things that you enjoy doing? Where are there some skill gaps, right? So for me, I didn't necessarily have, I've always had skill gaps, even at this level in my career. There's still things that I have yet to do and I still need to learn. But I knew that after spending 5+ years leading DEI at L'Oreal, there was a gap in my certification, right? And so I knew that diversity was where I saw myself. And while my undergrad degree was in international marketing, I felt that getting a certificate of diversity and inclusion would be important. The class I took at Cornell was a great class. I could have taught the class, right? That's how basic it was. But there's something about having a certificate of diversity and inclusion from Cornell that adds a little asterisk, right? So as you're doing your assessment, are there some certificates that you might need to take? Are there some LinkedIn learnings that you should participate in, as to make yourself more attractive? So assessment is first and foremost. Second, a lot of time spent on research, right? So conducting a thorough research means I'm looking at the employers, I'm looking at the job openings. That's important. Again, because assessment of my values and what's important to me, I want to find a company that is aligned with my values and has the proper opportunities for career advancement and growth. A lot of people are like, I'm looking for a job and they're just wide open, and that's great. To some degree, but I think the more you can tailor, right? And so what I've often said to particularly women and other people from different dimensions of diversity is take a look at lists, right? Like, what are the best companies for? Right, the best companies for working mothers, the best companies for multicultural women, the best companies for dad, the best companies for vets, the best company for LGBTQ employees, right? The best company from a disability perspective. Every dimension that I've have lists. And so whether it's Universum or whatever the organization that puts out this list, these companies have satisfied the requirements to make it onto that list. And so if I was my daughter is much older now, but if my daughter was younger and as a working mom, I want to think about the company that I'd want to go to, I'd want to look at that list of companies that are best for working moms to understand what makes them best. Right? What are the benefits? What are the commitments that they've made that make them stand out over other companies? And as I research those best for the dimension that matters to me, I see what other things about that company do I find appealing. I just got off of a call with our employees. We had a session today on ESG, right? And so if environmental social government is important in what that company does and contributes to society, then that might be a company that I want to go for, because my values are that strong that I want to know that I'm supporting a company that is very much concerned with the role that they play in society, their carbon footprint, their water usage, space usage. That might be something that truly matters to me. And so I want to look at those companies and I want to look at their ESG reports. I want to look at their commitment. So, the interview, even though it sometimes doesn't feel that way, it is a two-way conversation. As much as the company is interviewing you, you are interviewing the company. Do you stand for my values, right? I know in this current environment, so much of what happens in the social space is showing up now in corporate spaces, right? So I'm old enough to say that there was a time when we didn't talk about religion, we didn't talk about politics, we didn't talk about many of the things that we are talking about now at work. But now employees are looking at companies to say, where do you stand on Black Lives Matter? Where do you stand on anti-Semitism? Where do you stand on the dimensions of diversity that matter to me? So while, yes, I am looking for a job, I also want to know that you're a company that I feel good about your values. I feel good about the values of the leadership. It's in line with my own values. That's important in your research. The other piece that's important is networking. I think back to my Chase days, and I am one of my cohort mates would tease me. I'd walk around Chase Metro Tech, and I would say hello to everyone. And I would say hello. I'd ask about wife or kid because I, had lunch with them or coffee with them. And I remember that. And he would call me the mayor of Metro Tech. And I used to get so offended because he would tease me with that title. But then I was like, wait a second, that's my networking skill. that's my superpower that I don't even realize is a superpower. So my ability to connect with people is important. And so building and maintaining a professional network is an effective way to learn about job openings and referrals, and also gain insights into industries and companies. You know, when I was at JP Morgan, I knew I was ready to leave. And I had heard about the work that I was in a campus role where Terry and I had worked together, and I heard about the campus activities at L'Oreal and how they recruit, and I'm like, oh, I want to go and work there. And I was able to get an interview with L'Oreal, and so I showed up, coming from banking, I showed up in my suit, and I did my interview with this. It was on a Friday, and the head of recruitment was this French woman, and she was leaving for Paris that afternoon, looking very chic in her jeans and her top on a Friday. I'm in a suit for my interview. The recruiter was like, yeah, no, they are not interested in continuing with you as a candidate. And so, of course, I was hurt, but didn't understand why. When my position was eliminated from JP Morgan, it was during a downsizing phase, and I had the option to, look for a role at JP Morgan or take a package. I decided to take a package. And I was through a network, I found out that the YMCA of New York was looking for a recruiter. They didn't have the budget to hire someone full time, but they did have the budget to bring me on for a couple days a week. And so it's through someone in my network that I found out about that YMCA job. And while working at the Y, someone from my Chase network reached out to say, hey, L'Oreal is looking for someone to lead their diversity recruiting. Do you mind if I forward your resume? And remember, I was hurt before from L'Oreal, and I was like, all right, sure, we'll see where it goes. But this time he forwarded it, and I got the call for an interview. LinkedIn was now this new thing, right? And so I looked on LinkedIn. And so the person that I knew from L'Oreal, I reached out to her to say, hey, I have an opportunity. Can you meet me for coffee? I'd love to know more. She met me for coffee. She told me, this is what we do at L'Oreal, and we look for people from different disciplines. She gave me way more insight than the recruiter did the first time around. And she also said, you should probably speak to a few other people. And so she referred me to someone who I never met before on LinkedIn, and he agreed to talk to me. And he was like, well, Cecilia, I'm looking at your resume and I see that you've done a lot, but I can tell you one thing. Don't show up looking like a banker. What did I say about my first interview? I showed up in my blue suit, right? And the woman was in jeans. He was like, don't show up looking like a banker. Show some of your personality, show some of your style, wear a little color. And so, okay, so I couldn't go so far from the pattern. Again, I've been a banker for 14 years. I don't know how to not. But I did show up in a rust colored pantsuit, which was very bold for me. I still, minimal jewelry, but I tried to show a little bit of my personality. I'm not going to say that's why I got the job, because I got the job because of my skill set, but I can say that was one of the reasons why they could see me in the role, right? And I would not have gotten the interview without my referral. Two, I would not have gotten the insight without reaching out to someone on LinkedIn. And so I accredit all three of those people as for the reasons why I was able to secure the role at L'Oreal. So networking is very important. And we'll talk more about that when I move into the LinkedIn section. The other thing that I've done in the past, and I do I'm highly suggest, is tailoring your application, right? And so when you're going for a job, definitely have a different cover letter. Still use a cover letter. I think that's important because you can only put so much in your resume. Your cover letter is your chance to really add all the extra things, where you can say things like my passion and you can add more insight. And so definitely customize for each role. It's important. Don't just have one resume that you send to everyone. As I'm learning about AI and how individuals are using AI in their job search, I've also seen some articles that say that you can have AI help you to customize your cover letter, right? Again, I haven't tested that out yet, but I think it's definitely worth it, looking into. Any help that we can get is important. And then the other thing that I think is important is as you prepare. Oh, so Morgan says that they tested it out. Yeah, no, I've tested it out for other things, and definitely, it's been a good inspirational tool. I'm never going to just like copy and paste, but it's been a great tool. So I definitely suggest researching that too. And for cover letters, exactly. So if you're not playing with Chat GPT, play around with it and see what you get, right? Even to ask it to proofread, to grammatically error, or to give you a different way of saying something. Like how many times can we say managed, I managed, right? Get some other words, and that's one good feature there. In your preparation for the interview, really, this again, you've done your research, you've networking, but it's also important to now, think about what are some interview questions. Think about questions that they would ask you, and how do you best highlight your experience. And so, tell me about a time. When you have your tell me about a time story, have more than one story in case you're interviewing more than one person, in case you're being interviewed by more than one person, so that way you have a different story. As with your resume, your story should be in the STAR method, which is, I'm going to tell you the situation, I'm going to tell you the task that I did, the actions that I took, and what were the results. So all your answers should be able to say, the reason why we closed that deal was because I was involved, right? Like it really is what you bring to the forefront, and that should be the same in your bullets in your resume. It should say achieved growth in sales by X% as a result of my leadership skills, right? So you want to have that STAR approach. Also, think about what are some questions that you should ask the interviewer. As someone who spent a lot of years doing interviews, and I would, ask really good questions, spend time with the candidate. It really frustrated me at the end when they would say, "Oh no, I don't have any questions." Like, how can you not? Right? So think about the questions that you would ask. Even, one of my favorite people and mentors is Carla Ann Harris. If you do not know Carla Ann Harris, look her up. She's over at Morgan Stanley. She's written tremendous books about leadership skills. She talks about one of the questions that you can ask someone is what three adjectives would you use to define a star, right? And that tells you what the company thinks, like what the company is looking for, right? And that's a great question. And you can ask that question of different people, and they'll give you three different attributes. Sometimes it'll be the same, sometimes not, but it's giving you some insight into what they look for in order to determine that someone is successful. So think about what questions you would have. And then post the interview, I'm still a thank you email person. You don't need a thank you card anymore. I grew up in the thank you card era, but I've migrated over to thank you emails. The thank you emails is your opportunity. Again, it's the period at the end of the sentence. It allows you to highlight why you are the right person for the job. It allows you to restate your interest in the role. It also keeps you top of mind, right? And so if you want the recruiter to walk away knowing your leadership skills, your financial acumen, right? This is your opportunity to double down and restate that as to why you think you'd be an excellent candidate for the job based on our conversation because of my XYZ. So again, think about your self-assessment, the research, tap into your network, even people who you don't know. So looking to see who works at the company, who might know somebody that you know, is a way to stay connected. Tailor your applications, think about preparing for the interview, and then the follow-up. The other piece that I'd want to talk about is LinkedIn, or as I like to call it, Linkstagram, because I see more people posting pictures, of which I've done myself, of here I am speaking at this event, right? If we were in person, I would ask Terry or Philip or someone to take pictures of me in front of the room speaking to all of you, And then I would post on LinkedIn, happy to go back to my alma mater to talk about career, whatever, strategies in career and networking. What that does is it lets people who follow me know, oh, Cecilia is a really good speaker. Look at her commitment to her alma mater, and look at the topics that Cecilia is capable of talking about, right? And so when you think about, even if you attended something, you don't have to be the speaker. You can, it brings you to the top of people's LinkedIn pages when they go on and they see the posts from you. But from a job perspective, and I do believe this is why I landed the job that I am at, was because I actively used LinkedIn. So optimize your LinkedIn profile. That is your online resume. Go take a look at it, have other people take a look at it, make sure it's up to date, make sure it reflects your skills and experience. Have a compelling headline, a summary, right? One thing that I tell people all the time, there is no harm in reposting relevant articles to your industry, right? So if you're in finance and there's a great article in the Wall Street Journal, the Wall Street Journal has a link that lets you post it onto your LinkedIn story. So to your LinkedIn profile, I take advantage of that, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or NPR or Harvard Business Review or the New York Times. Also, I don't just post it, I add some sentences to it. Great article on diversity, on the importance of blah, blah, blah. I've heard, and I have not done this yet, that you can even use Chat GPT to summarize an article. So you read the article and you're not sure how to summarize it, you can put that link in Chat GPT and ask it to summarize this article with three bullet points. So somebody else is doing the work for you, right? So, I mean, work is hard enough. Let's find some ways to navigate that. One, it keeps you top of mind for people who you're connected to, and it sees you're active. Like, you want to be an active user because, again, you want to stay top of mind. I am not a collector, so I don't just connect with people on LinkedIn for the sake of connecting. And I do that because I take my engagement very seriously. And so if I connect with somebody, I want to be able to maintain that connection. I'm not saying I need a deep friendship, but I've had experiences where I've accepted someone's request and they wanted a job in an area that I had nothing to do with. And then I felt guilty because now they're expecting me to respond and I don't have an answer, and it's not my place to say, oh, call Terry, right? Because Terry didn't give me permission, right? But it's better if you could, as you build your network, be tailored. Again, look for people in your industry, in your field, find to connect with other people who went to Pace University, who are marketing majors, who are members of the same field related affiliations. But don't just click that button to connect without providing a customized why. So hi Cecilia, thanks for coming to speak to us today at Pace. I'm also interested in diversity or board work, and I'd love to stay connected. That's a request that I will take because we have something in common and you've demonstrated why. Right? Or thanks, I'm getting ready to intern at L'Oreal. I see that you worked there for 14 years. Would love to stay in touch with you in case I have some questions about my internship. I'll take that one as well. Right? So be intentional, not just clicking. It's okay to say we have something in common. I'm interested, right? And I'll tell you what to do if you don't have anything in common in just a second. I want to stay with my correct flow here. The other thing is you can set your job search preferences in LinkedIn. So it has a feature that allows you to set the preferences based on industry, job function, and more. It makes sure that way it serves you. One, you can turn on that you're looking for work, you're interested in. And two, because you're using it as a job search, you want to tailor it to your specific field and industry and all the other factors that matter. Because many companies are posting their jobs not only on their website, but they're co-posting it to LinkedIn. So you can either do one of two things. You can either apply to roles directly on LinkedIn. I like that option also, because it also tells you you're one of 20 people, you're one of 80 people who have applied. So it's good to know. You don't know who the competition is, but you know there are a lot of people who are looking at this job. Or you can, see it on LinkedIn and then go directly to that company's website and apply. Either way, your resume your resume with the right buzzwords, the right experience will get called, will be screened. I know that recruiters, having been one, we're famous for scanning, not reading. So really important when you think about the job that you want to apply for, that your resume has those industry specific jargon and buzzwords, so that on scanning, those words pop out to the recruiter, and then they'll slow down to actually read your job description or your LinkedIn resume slash profile. The other thing, again, like in your intentional, is again doing research. So you're again, the research you're doing is looking at the company, you're looking at their size, their mission, anything about their culture. Because if you were to go to LinkedIn and type in L'Oreal, you would not only see the people who work at L'Oreal. If you do posts that mention L'Oreal, you will see all the posts. Like I said, it's that Linkstagram, right? So you'll see that L'Oreal 2 weeks ago had Take Our Children to Work Day. And you'll see that for L'Oreal, Take Our Children to Work Day is a big initiative. So it's not just the children come in with their parents or their guardians and sit with them. They have a full program tailored for all the kids. And so you know that now because you saw everyone posting pictures of their kids in L'Oreal t-shirts doing different beauty things, right? And so that gave you an insight, all because you used the keyword L'Oreal. You'll also see who else works there. And then finally, the piece that I think is important in your networking that I do think you should do is ask for referrals. So if you were not connected to me and I was not here today, and you were interested in L'Oreal, but you see that Terry is connected to me, and you see we work together, and whatever our the overlap is, you could then send a message to Terry saying, "Hey Terry, I see that Cecilia is in your network. Would you mind introducing me?" And Terry will say, "Hey, Cecilia, Morgan is also a student at Pace, and she's looking for, her new job. Would you mind if I connected her?" I would take that request because I know Terry and I value her, right? And so the referral feature really, it really it increases your chance of getting the interview, and really increases your opportunity of landing a job, right? Because now, not only did you connect through Terry to me, but if you then go and apply for a job at L'Oreal and mention me, someone from L'Oreal will say, "Hey, Cecilia, did you meet Morgan, or Morgan gave your name?" And I'll say, "Oh yeah, no, I met her. We both went to Pace. I had a great conversation, and here's why." Right? I can tell you, even in my Hydric role, people still constantly call to ask me names of people. Right? "Hey, did you work with so and so?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did work with her, but no, I didn't know her that well." Or, "I did know her that well. Oh no, she's really great." Or, at the time I worked with her, she was a little weak in her leadership skills. Maybe that's a question that you could ask her on the interview, and see, and so she can talk about how she's evolved, right? So I would never intentionally tank someone from an opportunity, but I would be honest in my feedback. As an HR person, I'm going to give the person who's asking me the feedback. But depending on the relationship, I would say, again, at the time that I worked with them, this was my experience. So I would probe on that area to see if that's a gap that has been addressed, and no longer a development gap. So those are my tips for intentional job seeking as well as networking. I know we did have some questions, and so I do want to open up the floor. Would love it if we can go live. So if anyone has a question
Yeah.
live, great, great, great. Hope I can answer the questions.
Hi, I'm Janie.
Hey, Janie.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'll just give a quick synopsis. I lost my job in March of 2020. I'm a freelance journalist when Governor Cuomo shuttered the state. Took care of mom, and I'm going back into the job market. My resume is structured many jobs in it, substantial. I took a recent job because it was offered to me because I needed to work. It's part-time. So as an HR manager, how do you feel about somebody applying for a job which might not be your recent job, but it's the job the person wants and for which she is skilled? As again, sometimes people take jobs because they need them, like I did.
Mhm.
And many of the features you mentioned on LinkedIn, they're all wonderful. However, LinkedIn has a policy of charging for premium membership, and not everybody can do that.
Okay.
That was the other thing. But really, my point was, I graduated PACE a long time ago, before Y2K. Really before Y2K, back when there was a Briarcliff campus. Okay, and I'm really looking for a job in media communications journalism, because that's my training. I've been doing that for 20 years until I had to stop. So how would you feel about somebody applying for a job for which she's skilled, for which I'm skilled, but it might not be the most recent job on my resume? Thank you for taking my question.
No, I mean, that happens all the time, right? And so in your cover letter, I'm applying for this role because that's where the vast of my experience is. And while I'm currently doing this role, I've developed these additional skills here, but the bulk of my responsibility has been X, Y, and Z. I think, in your case, if you see a job that is of interest and you were going to apply, that I would definitely take advantage of connecting with individuals who work at that company before applying. Right.
Yes,
And so
of course.
seeing who works either in HR or maybe who works in the department and say, I saw a position in your company. I'm really interested in applying. However, I would love to have, an informational conversation. Right. The words informational means I'm not expecting you to do anything after the conversation, even though most people will. Right. If they meet you and they're like, no, she's really talented, then they'll say, well, one, have you applied? But let me know that you applied so I can let the recruiters know, so that they will pull your resume and interview it. Or they'll say, if you've applied, let me know, again, so they can support you. But this is where having, and you don't need the premium membership to be able to not Google, see, it's another word, to be able to research
Right.
who
Okay.
in your network or network adjacent is connected to that company that could give you some insights and tips. And from that informational conversation, if they feel that you're a great candidate, they would then support you. And so I would tap into it that way. I wouldn't, if you're finding that you're applying and applying and applying and no one is calling you back, then I would reach out and make some connections to find out what's going on. Have somebody who works at the company or somebody who works in your industry take a look at your resume and give you some candid feedback.
Someone has, but thank you. I appreciate it. I'm just new, starting out again. So thank you.
I get it. Times have changed. Yeah. Was there another live in the space?
Yes, hi, Cecilia. My name is Michael Albers,
Hi, Michael.
and I'm a graduate of Pace University. I was laid off almost 2 years ago, and I'm struggling with trying to stay relevant in my field. But my question for you is, how do you overcome that barrier when you haven't worked in almost 2 years? You're competing against people who are currently in the workforce. I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's your field, if you don't mind? I want to make sure that my
it's technology.
Okay.
And I've worked as a system analyst for a financial company. So my field is technology in the financial industry.
So one, I would say the way one thing that you could do is continue to take LinkedIn courses or any course, so that you are up to date with what the conversation is in your space. So there's always a class or certificate, and sometimes those certificates don't have a lot of costs, right? They could be nominal, like under $100, but you
Yeah.
get to add it to your LinkedIn profile as a recent certification that you've done. So again, it brings you up on top of, to the top of the profile of people who are looking. The other thing that you can do is think about, and I don't know, I know for my company, but we look really at the C-suite level. But I know that there are some companies who specialize in on-demand talent. So you could, so where someone is out on family leave, or somebody is out for whatever reason, or maybe someone retired and left, and now that there's a vacancy, but they're not ready to hire a full-time person, so they're looking for someone for 3 months, for 6 months. You should think about those types of roles. So that on-demand talent space, that gig talent space, is where you can at least be connected to work for a company for a short period of time,
Yeah.
filling for somebody, because one, it gives you more relevancy to your job, but also gives you connection and access to that company, who might either say, okay, at the end of the contract, thank you, or at the end of the contract, oh, we have another opportunity, right?
Yes.
So I know sometimes when we I have friends who've been on the market for a number of months, if not over a year as well. We tend to think that we're going to go from one full-time job to another full-time job, but the market has changed, and so you might go from a full-time job to a temp role, right? But
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with that temp role. And so if you're this is for anyone, if you're currently not working, find out who are the agencies, the companies, and the organizations, and I don't know for everyone, who will provide temp opportunity for your field.
Okay, great.
So
That's really great advice, and I really appreciate your feedback. And I also am very impressed with your involvement in DEI, and that's actually one of the certificates that I want to do in LinkedIn Learning.
go.
And thank you so much for spending time with us as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Cecilia, this is Dave Berry. Could I jump in here for a sec?
Sure.
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, I'm the class of '82, so I go back a few years. But I wanted to two comments I wanted to make. One is on LinkedIn. What people should try to do is find themselves as if a recruiter was looking for you for your title, right? And I did this several years ago, and I ended up. So I've lived overseas for a long time. I'm by the way, I'm the chief information officer for Board Riders. We own Quicksilver, Roxy, DC Shoes, all these major brands. And I looked for myself as a global CIO. I came up on the fifth page, which means you're invisible to a recruiter, right? And what I realized, and the comment that you made, Cecilia, which is super important, is the buzzwords of the day need to be incorporated into your LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely.
And so what I did is I spent 2-3 weeks going through this thing to get the business intelligence, the AI, the e-commerce, all those the buzzwords, and then I came up number 2 on the first page.
Absolutely.
Right?
Thank you, Dave, for validating. Dave, you also bring up a point that I forgot to mention. In your resume and your LinkedIn profile should be almost similar. I'll tell you one thing. When I started to interview at Heidrick, when they first reached out to me, they reached out to me for a role, not with the company, but for a role that they were filling. And they made me a resume, and they made it based on my LinkedIn profile. And I was like, oh, I actually have a resume, but thank you. So again, important for your LinkedIn profile. The second piece is Google, Indeed, job search, whatever, Monster, whoever you use for your jobs, Google and see the jobs that you would apply to, and make sure that in your bullets are some of the bullets from those jobs.
Yep.
Because that tells you what companies are looking for. And a lot of times, because we spend so much time just doing the work, and it's been 5 or 10 years since we've updated our resume, we're just thinking we're just going to list these things that we've done, but that's not what the company is looking for. So take a look at what job descriptions actually say, and copy and steal everything, place it onto your job, provided that you can speak to that thing. Because what I found a lot of times with those job descriptions, I'm like, oh, that's a really cool way of saying the same thing that I do. But I said my thing in the most basic way. Right. So let me to Dave's point, let me use the relevant jargon of the time for the industry.
And I think that's super important to do that because, as I said, the recruiters know what the current jargon is because they're out getting the feedback from the companies, right? The other thing I was going to offer up is, Michael, if you'd like to have a chat on the side, we can do that since I'm in the technology industry. You talk about networking. I network all the time, and just and by the way, what I would encourage people to do is when you network, ask for advice, not a job.
Yes.
Right. It's super important to say, I'm looking for advice to change industries or to go to work for a different company or move to a different city or whatever. Who doesn't like to give you advice?
Or who doesn't like to talk
Right.
about themselves, right?
Right.
That's
There you
that.
go.
That's, you ask for a 15-minute, a 30-minute a coffee chat, it turns into an hour because they spent the 15 minutes talking about themselves
Right.
and the other 15 giving you advice.
Right. There you
Really good advice. The other thing that I would say is, as we are still in COVID, but things are opening up, find out what affiliations you should be connected to that are having in-person meetups. So I can only speak from my gender. So I am a member of Chief, which is for women in senior leadership. As Terry said, I'm the co-president of Elevate, also for women. Chief is a little more, you have to be a member to go to their events, but Elevate is open to all women. Sorry, men, I belong to a lot of women-led organizations, but so find out, what are the organizations that are either by your dimension of diversity or by your industry. So if you're a chief information officer, I'm sure there's an organization that has a local chapter that you could join. For Elevate, it's if you Google Elevate Network.
Elevate Network.
2 L's. Yeah, and it's 2 L's, and Elevate has tons of events and it's global. So you can see what's happening in Chicago, what's happening in New Jersey, what's happening in New York. Again, sorry guys, I should have came prepared with some men example, but there's also Luminary, which is based in a couple of states, but Luminary in New York on Broadway actually has a flagship where you can go and work for the day as well as attend their events. So I will do a little bit of homework on some other ones and I'll give it to Terry that she can share with you. But I know the ones that I frequent, and I frequent Chief and Luminary and Elevate pretty consistently. And Scott has his hand up. Hey, Scott, how are you?
So I'm a recent master's graduate. I graduated last year. I am trying to enter a field that I don't have a lot of job experience or connections in. So I got this master's degree to sort of shift into a new field, and I haven't had too much luck finding work. I worry that I don't have the experience or the connections because I'm again trying to move into a new field, and I want to know if you had any advice on how to maybe be better at finding work.
Yeah, so I would start with, where did your cohort classmates land?
I can check in. At the time, there was a few people who had positions already or who I guess were sort of looking. So I could, I guess, try and check in and see where they've had luck or what places they've been to.
Yeah, I would start there because that's really easy, because then that tells you that's the companies that in the past year hired people similar to you and like you and might have additional hiring needs. The other piece is to then have that breadcrumb. If those companies hired people who are like you, what are the other companies in their industry set? And then go on to their websites and see what type of jobs they have available. Right. So like if I knew that everybody from my industry set went to ABC because they were in media, I'm now going to say, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to go to ABC, but let me look at, at NBC, at Netflix, at whoever, right? I want to see the other industry. And so I would start there. Then the third piece is I would see, is there an industry affiliated group? for people who are in that space, and then I would find out how do I join that, and then I would ask for guidance and advice from people who are in that industry set, who are a little bit further away from their degree with more experience, who can give you advice and guidance.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's the old adage of you can't see the forest for the trees because you're so close to it. And it sounds like the advice I'm giving is simple because it is, right? But because you're so close to it, you never take a step back and say, let me lay this out and where can I start? So thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Terry, did you want to take any of the questions that came in earlier? Hopefully I can answer those too.
Sure.
Oh, and hold on, are there any questions in the
Yes.
chat?
Hi, I have one.
Okay, hi.
My name is Samriddhi, Sam,
Hi, Sam.
and I'm currently a student of MS in mental health counseling at PACE.
Mhm.
I am expected to graduate by the end of this year. I'm on an international student visa, which is valid until 2026. This is relevant because I'm looking to find a job in this field as a counselor. And at some point, I will need to transfer from my student visa to a work visa in the US. And I'm also looking for a company which will hopefully sponsor optional practical training, a sponsorship that will allow me to transfer from a student to a work visa. Could you help me understand how I can navigate and look for companies that are specifically going to help me with that transition or can help me with that transition?
Yeah, that for me, honestly, that one is a little bit. I have some experience in that space, but not too much. I know, for L'Oreal, they didn't sponsor visas, but they did have short-term assignments where while you still had the legal ability to work in the country, they could have you work for them, but because they weren't able to sponsor you, and I forget what the laws were at the time that prohibited the company from sponsoring, what L'Oreal would then do is say, if you need to return back to your homeland, we would give you an introduction, because again, L'Oreal's in 135 countries at the time. We can give you an introduction to HR in that local country. Hopefully they could hire you. So I would look and see what companies. I wouldn't start with the sponsorship. I think that might be a harder ask. I think it's more about what companies have opportunities, at least for the length of your visa, right? Who has, oh, hold on. I touched something. Who has, I touched something and it gave me a different screen. Someone just put something in the chat. You know what? I'm going to say that I should have said this in the beginning. While I'm coming in with a lot of different perspectives, much like Dave, much like I just saw in the chat, if you also have a response, please, this is an opportunity, and this is the importance of the PACE network. And so, thank you, Jen, by giving some advice to Sam. So, Sam, like I said, I would look for the companies that had roles that would cover you until your visa expires. And then as your visa is closer, then you can begin to see, what are the companies that have sponsorship opportunities. And so looks like there's a lot of support for you in the chat. I hope that you're somewhere where you can copy out the chat, but I guess, Terry, you can also save the chat and make sure this information is saved.
Yes, absolutely. And Sam, we'll continue to work with you, of course, from PACE Career Services. Absolutely. And thanks to everyone who's giving advice as well.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And I will, I'll be on the lookout. Thank you so much.
Please. Okay, thank you, Sam.
If I need just for my clarification, I'm sorry. If I need further help, is it okay if I contact either of you via email?
Oh, well, from my perspective, of course, Sam, we're here for
yeah.
We're here for life.
Yeah, and
support you and excited to support you. So absolutely.
Yeah, And there are also other people in the chat who had specific responses. I know Phyllis and Jen both gave their contact information. So hopefully you're at a place where you can capture it. If not, follow up with Terry, and she'll give you their emails.
I will do that. Thank you, because I need to be in touch with you. Thank you so much. That's helpful.
Great. Somebody, is L'Oreal located outside of New York? Yeah, so L'Oreal, while we have offices, I no longer work there, while they have offices in New York, that because they manufacture and make 90% of their products, they have facilities in New Jersey, on the West Coast, in Alabama, there's offices in Florida, in Tampa. So yeah, so L'Oreal has, and in New Jersey, there's like finance roles, there's IT roles, there's R&I. There are a full suite of roles that it takes to get a product from inception to shelf to the consumer. So again, I'm a big supporter of L'Oreal. If you should definitely look at the careers page. It'll tell you all the current openings at L'Oreal.
Cecilia, I'm sorry.
Okay. Hi, Cecilia. Oh, can I, Terry?
Go ahead.
Oh, good. Hi, Cecilia. Patricia Sawyers. I'm hoping that you could kind of guide me as to maybe what I'm doing wrong in this situation. But I'm in finance. I have a master's. I'm doing the PhD at Pace right now. And I have been trying to, I also do financial planning because I'm a certified financial planner too, but I'm trying to get more into other areas of finance. I've been sending out resumes, etc. I can't seem to hold down on any of the positions that I've applied for. Granted, I may not have the experience, but I do think I have a wealth of knowledge. Yeah. So I'm not sure what am I doing wrong here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you're not getting any bites on your resume, I would take a look at your resume. I would take a look at the language, to the example that Dave gave, where he went out and, searched for himself and saw where he popped up, right? It could be that the way in which you are just describing the things that you've done is not written in the language that stops the recruiters and gets their attention. So I would scan your resume for the appropriate words and language. I also, if you're applying for roles outside of your current discipline in finance and you're moving into other spaces, the recruiter, in looking at your resume, has no idea why. And so all they see is somebody, all they see is somebody who's been a waitress who's applying for chef jobs. Yes, it's all still in the restaurant, but I don't know that you have culinary experience, that you have other things, that you've been waitressing, but in the meantime, you've been doing all this other stuff. And so again, looking at your resume, looking at the language, and I'm sorry if that analogy is not good, but it's the only thing that I could think of that got us close. I also would look at your cover letter to be that explanation as to why, right? Or your summary statement on LinkedIn or whatever, to explain, because again, if the recruiters are scanning and they're looking for buzzwords for the role that they're trying to fill, and your resume doesn't have those buzzwords, they're not going to look at you. They're going to just keep scanning. The other thing, I think Terry and the team at Pace, they offer coaching. I think you should also speak with a coach at how to best, tweak your resume so that it matches what you're looking for. I would also use some, as I said before, I would use some of the language in the job posting in your resume. But if it gets right down to it that it's because you haven't done that type of work before, then that's where you should look for people at the companies that you're interested in working for to have those informational interviews to say, can you give me some feedback on my resume? What would you need to see to know that I'm capable, right? And even in speaking with those referral type conversations, it's not unlikely that once that person sees you and sees what you're capable of and gives you some feedback and you make the adjustments to your resume, that they would then say, okay, well, now I can vouch for you. Now, when you apply for the role, I can then vouch for you. But if recruiters aren't mind readers, and I know that as a job seeker, you look at your resume and you think your resume is telling story A and B, and the recruiter is seeing story E and F, right? And so you kind of have to help them by making it as appealing so that it falls in line with what they're looking for, and then they could double click and see all the things that you bring to the table. But on first read, if it doesn't stop them in their tracks, it's not going to.
Got it. Thank you.
And Cecilia, thank you. We have time, I think, for one more question before we. So who wants to ask the last question?